Of course I am familiar with these historical events, and I'm aware that there's a measure of controversy surrounding them. But to be quite frank with you, this is all ancient history.
Mr. President, it has often been said, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it.
A vastly different world, young man, shouldering a radically desperate state of universal affairs.
No argument, sir. I'm merely inviting you to acknowledge some credibility to the pattern of the theme. Case in point, the next document was published by the think tank Project for a New American Century, and it's entitled Rebuilding America's Defenses, and was written by Dick Cheney and Jeb Bush. To quote from the document, sir,
Further, the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. Of course this information worries me, yet it's not nearly as worrisome as you sitting here today suspiciously implying that 9/11 was somehow allowed to happen, or even orchestrated from the inside.
please keep in mind, Mr. President, everything I am about to say is documented as fact and part of the public record.
You have 5 minutes left. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, first, on the FBI's most wanted list, Osama bin Laden is not charged with the crimes of 9/11. When I called the FBI to ask them why this was the case, they replied, there is not enough evidence to link bin Laden to the crime scene. I later discovered he had never been indicted by the DOJ. FBI translator Sibel Edmonds was dismissed and gagged by the DOJ after she revealed that the government had foreknowledge of plans to attack American cities using planes as bombs as early as April 2001. In August of 2009, Ms. Edmonds broke her federal gag order and testified under oath that Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban were all working for and with the CIA up until the day of 9/11. The following is a quote from Mayor Giuliani during an interview on 9/11 with Peter Jennings from ABC News.
I went down to the scene and we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management. And we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. And it did collapse before we could actually get out of the building. So we were trapped in the building for 10, 15 minutes and finally found an exit and got out, walked north, and took a lot of people with us.
Who told him this? To this day, this question remains unanswered, completely ignored and emphatically denied by Mayor Giuliani on several public occasions. Hundreds of eyewitnesses, including first responders, fire captains, news reporters, and police, all described multiple explosions in both towers before and during the collapse. An astonishing video uncovered from the archives shows BBC News correspondent Jane Stanley reporting on the collapse of World Trade Center 7 over 20 minutes before it fell at 5:20 p.m. on the afternoon of 9/11.
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job.
Tapes from earlier BBC broadcasts shows news anchors discussing the collapse of World Trade Center 7 a full 26 minutes in advance. The BBC at first claimed that their tapes from 9/11 had been lost, before admitting that they made the error of reporting the collapse of World Trade Center 7 before it happened, without adequately explaining how they could have obtained advanced knowledge of the event. In addition, over an hour before the collapse of World Trade Center 7, at 4:10 p.m., CNN's Aaron Brown reported that the building has either collapsed or is collapsing. What is the meaning behind the following quote attributed to Dick Cheney, which came to light during the 9/11 Commission hearing? The passage is taken from the testimony given by the Secretary of Transportation, Norman Mineta.
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the Vice President turned and whipped his neck around and said, Of course, the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?
As the plane was not shut down, in addition to the fact that armed fighter jets were nowhere near the plane and the Pentagon defensive system was not activated, are we to take it that the orders were to let the plane find its target? And finally, Mr. President, the technology to enable cell phone calls from high-altitude airline flights was not created until 2004. And even by that point, it was only in the trial phase. Calls from cell phones, which formed an integral part of the official government version of the events, were technologically impossible at the time.
Well, V, I can't say this hasn't been interesting. However, our time here is up.
Mr. President, I implore you, based on the evidence you now possess, to use your executive power. Prove to us also that you do in fact care. Create a truly comprehensive and open congressional investigation into 9/11 and its aftermath. The families deserve the truth. The American people and the rest of the free world deserve the truth, Mr. President. Make sure you're on the right side of history.
I am on the right side of history. Thank you, V. My staff and I will be in touch.